Richard Hughes is a cookin, and he ain't cooking because of what he saw at Wembley. Liverpool have had long-term plans, long-term desires over Marc Guéhi, and we knew that this was going to be a long window. Liverpool started it very strong and very early, and we knew that they would go very strong in for some very good players. We didn't know that it would be such a fundamental change in the way that Liverpool wanted to play, and we didn't know they'd go so big on some targets, such as Isak. But we did know that they would probably look at a new centre-back at some point. Obviously, we've not had a full complement of centre-backs for quite some time. And actually, even though in pre-season we've seen some really good young, promising players, and, I think Stevenson and Nalo and those other guys have put kind of a bid in, if you like, for being part of the first-team squad. We see two really great players in prospect essentially agree in personal terms with Liverpool. Marc Guehi apparently has already agreed personal terms, and apparently personal terms would not be a hurdle for Giovanni Leone. And I think both of those are really great news. First of all, because of if you fundamentally look at the squad that we have right now in terms of Van Dijk, obviously captain, and he's got 2 years, but that is 2 years that is now running down, and probably the last 2 years that we're going to see him at the club. Although I love to see people go out on a great contract. We just have to be realistic in the modern game. Konate, who may still be playing the game of running his contract down. And then obviously Joe Gomez, who's in and out of the team. And frankly, I love his adaptability. I love him as a character. I love what he's done for the club. But if he's not ready to start and availability is a huge factor for Arne Slot, then we need to look at other people. And Marc Guehi seems to be a person who is genuinely a leader in that Palace side. B, he is homegrown, which helps us a lot, which might also be one of the issues with Joe Gomez, by the way. And on top of that, I think we're also swapping out someone potentially like Konate for someone like Marc Guehi, genuinely in the starting 11 regularly if he comes to the club, mainly because it's a World Cup year, but also just to put some pressure on the other guys in the team who will also want to be starting. Like I said, World Cup year means competition. World Cup year means players need to be a play-in. And if they ain't, then, well, they need to play their way into the side. But this also represents a fundamental change in the way that Liverpool are setting up that back line. And I do find it quite interesting that obviously the new shape that Liverpool have kind of at times requires the midfielder, so the holding six, if you like, to drop into that back line and to push the two centre-backs just that little bit wider. And it's interesting that we've identified Guehi, basically, and Leone as our two targets. First of all, because Leone is very comfortable on the right side of a centre-back pairing, but he's also very comfortable on the right side of a centre-back three. I'm not saying we'll ever really play that back three, but out or in possession, depending on what phase we're in, we might see him kind of pushed into those sort of areas and need to compress that kind of zone. And you can kind of see that at Crystal Palace. It's very much in Liverpool's plan right now to push opponents out wide, to push on those fullbacks, and essentially to play an adaptable back three or play a player who can drop in between the two. Leone would suit that almost perfectly. Even though he's 18 and even though there's probably a long way to go in his development and his game, he's already got those factors that would make him one of those great players. Marc Guehi, on the other hand, is a completely different profile to Konate, by the way, as is Leone, but we're looking at a player who is essentially A, a leader, B, English, so it definitely helps in terms of quotas and numbers, those kind of things. C, a great ball player, a great ball carrier, so I don't worry about those things. Competitive in stand-up tackles, he's very good at winning the ball back in terms of just getting onto a player and dispossessing them. But of course, he isn't the same imposing figure, even though he is a centre-back and he is very imposing, as someone like Ibu, because Ibu is a very unique character. And I think what we have to do as Liverpool fans is reconsider where we're at in terms of the way we think about this current side. It's not about, is this player a good player or not? Is this player a good fit for what Arne Slot wants to achieve out on the field? And the answer would be obviously yes, last season for both Konate and for Van Dijk, who were both fantastic for us and part of the reason that we put in, as Van Dijk had said at Wembley on Sunday, such great defensive performances last year and such a great defensive record. But on the other side of that, you've also got to wonder if the reason that Konate is looking away, the reason that Trent was looking away, the reason that we've signed other profiles such as Frimpong and we're looking at people like Leone and Guehi, not only for depth, but also to challenge this starting 11, is because those are very fundamentally different centre-backs, that of Konate and also Van Dijk. And if we're looking at leaders picking up from the back of leaders, because we won't always have Van Dijk, we've learned in this off-season there are going to be a lot of transitional moments, there's going to be a lot of challenges, there's going to be a lot of change in terms of shape and in terms of formation and tactics and the way we progress the ball, Marc Guehi's perfect for that. He's a great ball carrier. He's amazing at dribbling around other players. Not only that, but his hookup play with other players is absolutely A1. And on top of that, I also think that we're looking at a player who's a really great ball player and will probably play. We've been seeing that like outball, but probably play that outball with the verve and the commitment and the kind of technical ability that we've been looking for. Not that Canate can't, but again, it's not about being good or bad. It's about being a suited match for what it is that we're trying to achieve. Not only that, but of course, we're looking at a transition to the next stage, the next phase for Liverpool. This is becoming a slot side. And I think one thing, we'd be kind of remiss not to flag is that there's a lot of change in one off season. It's not that we're not signing quality players. It's not that we're not with great coaches on a day-to-day basis. All of those things, very obvious. But it will take some time for these guys to knit together. They've barely played, 4 or 5 competitive games together. And a lot of those were rotated in and out in terms of, just, who's playing with who's a pair, whatever. And you could see that in the second goal. I've got to admit, I think Wharton does a better job than anyone in our back line, but Wharton does a great job of spotting that gap. And one thing that's been identified by a number of people now on social media is Liverpool's need for those midfielders to drop back and then suddenly transition down the field is being spotted already by other managers. And so if you can bring in a ball-playing centre-back, someone who can hold the ball, transition it themselves, that's slightly different for the need to get those midfielders onto it. And I think Marc Guehi is a very considered part of that. And we might even see him come in, and similar to the way that we saw Ibu and Kwanzaa sort of one push the other out of the team last season, even though Ibu was the preferred starter, I think we are going to see Marc Guehi come in and probably be promised minutes. That's what he's asked for. It's what I think he's kind of identified. And equally, if we bring Leone in, he's already had the chat. At one point, I thought he was nailed on to go to Inter. Everyone was speaking as if Inter Milan were the only option for him. We're now looking at a guy who's met with Richard Hughes, who's heard the vision, who's heard the plan, and has been very convinced on that. He's one of Italy's great young centre-backs. And that's really impressive. You'd expect the bigger institutes in Italy to gobble those guys up, but they really aren't. And there'll be another video on that on my membership page later. It's a really interesting one for me, and it's one that I'm really excited about because not only does he provide depth, not only does he provide a player who's played, league seasons now at the very top level, not only young, but also obviously played in Serie C when he was very young, but he's played, at a very good level now and being a decent defender. We've also got now options to rotate, not only in the cups, but also just to have people on the bench, not worry about bringing another midfielder in. And I think what we've seen is Richard Hughes' ability to operate over the entirety of a window is really, really strong. We're looking at a guy who has strategy, not just a guy who is being opportunistic. It's opportunistic strategy, and it's so convincingly reassuring to Liverpool fans that we're getting this. Slot already knows what he wants to do. That will have been a long discussion a long time ago with Richard Hughes and with Michael Edwards and with everyone else and where they wanted to go. And there's a reason that so many players have been sold on this vision and the ideas behind it and the competitive element of what is going on. Sure, we lost at Wembley, and I think a lot of people are trying to find different ways to sort of rationalize that. We always want to win. Good winning and winning in general becomes a habit. And I don't think avoiding a curse is a reason for a team not to win. I think Liverpool genuinely lost to Crystal Palace, even though it was on penalties, because Palace had learned to outplay them and outplayed them to a degree that leveled the game up. And Liverpool don't want to be in level games, even though they will be, because of the way the tactics work at the moment. They want to be in games where they dominate. And Slot is talking about Liverpool dominating, making better chances, making better quality chances. And I think the eye test that we're currently doing is slowly going to change for us as Liverpool fans when we bring in defenders and midfielders. Well, we're not going to bring in many midfielders, when we train those midfielders to be a cohesive unit. You could clearly see on Sunday, like I said, the centre-backs just were not working in the way that we played them. I think that's because we need to have a bit of competition in there. We do need someone who's going to regularly push them. We can't just have someone who relies on that position and goes, well, it is my position. I'll play however I need. But also because Marc Guehi is a world-class player, certainly top tier in terms of the Premier League. And a lot of other sides are looking at it. I'm very surprised that there isn't really speak about Liverpool being in a race with them or anyone else. Chelsea, Newcastle, again, plenty of other guys out there who would have wanted Marc Guehi. So he's quality player, and I'm really excited for this. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I'll be doing a profile on what he's going to play like, what Liverpool will play like with him in there. And naturally, he's a very good successor to Virgil van Dijk because of the way that he plays and because of his feet. He will be that leader. He will probably be joining that leadership group at some point in the near future. I think Liverpool are planning for the long term. Patreon down there, membership down there, and of course, there is a super chat function as well. I appreciate you guys. Go take a look at the Patreon, and I will see you in a little while. Much love.